Kings and Chronicles. Well, actually, 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Yes, I know, that's a lot of books to talk about in a single day, but there's a big reason for that. They're both giant piles of historical content, much of it from the same period. Don't get me wrong, there's a reason both versions are in the Bible and they're both important, but historically speaking, much of their content covers approximately the same length of time. So, what are these books? Firstly, they are books of history, which means they are found in, you may have correctly guessed, the Old Testament. They, much like the book of Judges, are a massive historical information dump about, for kings, the kings of Israel all the way until the country of ancient Israel collapsed to outside invaders, and for Chronicles, everything. The whole history of the world, but especially the kings of Israel all the way up until the country of ancient Israel collapsed to outside invaders. Kings was written by an anonymous author. They didn't write down who they were, and we don't have a good guess who it could have been. Chronicles, also called the Events of the Days, may have been written by Ezra, who we'll talk about next week, but that's really just an educated guess. What is the purpose of these books? Well, first, they are naturally designed to teach history. History of Israel and the world story that led up to Israel. They are also designed to showcase one major theme: God's faithfulness. Despite the numerous times that the Israelites turned their backs on God, He continued to be faithful to them, offering them ways to return to their Creator. The content of these books is, well, let's go through it a little differently than usual. The beginning of the history they spin is the beginning of the world. It moves very briskly, sweeping through to King David in only 9 chapters of Chronicles. It spends a good deal of time exploring David's reign, mirroring the content of 2 Samuel. This stuff you've pretty much heard. 2 Chronicles and 1 Kings pick up at the same time, and now we're more or less on the same page for the rest of the content. They talk about Solomon, David's son and the next king, who builds the temple to God and rules with many gifts from God. Unfortunately, the kingdom splits in half because of Solomon's sin, and everything starts falling apart from there. The two texts split briefly. Kings focuses on 2 prophets named Elijah and Elisha, while Chronicles focuses on King Jehoshaphat. They come back together to talk about Joash. Kings briefly explains why God allowed the northern kingdom to get conquered by a country called Assyria, and they stick largely together with the reigns of kings Hezekiah and Josiah, then how Judah got conquered by Babylon. All of this matters for historical reasons, explaining how Israel was good for a little, then became wicked, and then was conquered by other countries because God allowed it. But it also sets up a dramatic twist in the narrative of Israel's history, how God would, eventually, deliver them from their capture and save His people.